Hello everyone, welcome to Coder and Boots. So in this video, we are going to discuss about the difference between expose and publish in Docker. So this is a very confusing topic in a lot of developers. The reason is, they will see expose and publish, and both are related to ports, okay, network ports. So I'll explain it very quickly. So it's a very short topic. So expose is something that we use for declaring, or basically this is something used by the image creator. Okay, so whoever is creating the Docker image, they use it for declaring what are the ports to be exposed, okay, from this particular image. Okay, so it is not doing anything technically inside. It is just kind of, we can say, a documentation. Okay, it's a part of the, we can say, it's just a command or an option that provides a documentation to the end user. So publish, on the other hand, publish is basically doing a technical activity internally, so where it maps the port from the Docker, the container network, to the host network. So we can do port mapping with publish. So that means technically there is a change happening with publish, but with expose nothing is going to happen. It is just it's not going to expose a port or anything. It is just going to give a documentation, or going to give some idea to the end user that these are the ports to be exposed. That's it. Okay, so we'll get into the practical part. So what I'm going to do is, I have a Docker file over here. Okay, so if you see my Docker file, so this is my Docker file, and I am building a simple Python image. So this is a Flask application, and as you can see over here, the program is very simple. It has just a few lines, and it is exposing, it is running Python Flask API, and it is going to run the API on port 9090. Okay, so that means we can experiment with port 9090 here. So my requirement is, I wanted to access this API from my host machine's IP. Okay, so that means from the host network I want to access this API. So let's see what happens with expose. So in this Docker file, we can add expose. Okay, so now what we do is, so before doing expose, we will not use any option. We will simply build this image. Okay, so Docker build -t my Flask app v1. Okay, I'm creating an image, my Flask app v1, and dot. So this is going, oh, what happened? Internal load metadata, Docker slim bookworm. Let me check what happened. Okay, so ideally this, yeah. Bookworm, this image is there. What happened with this image? Oh, okay. So the reason was, this is connected to private registry. So let me remove the private registry from there. So what I'll do is, I'll just cd.docker rmconfig.json. Okay, now cd docker, because it's not able to pull an image from the official repository, the Docker hub. Okay, so now let me try the docker build command again. Now you see it is building, or it's pulling the image. So it's pulling the base image and created the image. So now docker ps, docker images, to list the images. Now you see we have my Flask app, and the version is v1. Okay, now let's run it. Docker run -itd my Flask app v1. Okay, so I am running the image. Okay, so now this container is running. Okay, up 2 seconds ago. Now let's describe. Okay, Docker inspect this container. Okay, before inspecting, let's clear the screen again. Let's do docker ps. Docker ps, in this, if you see the details, container id, image, command, created, status, ports. Under the port section, you don't see anything. Okay, nothing is there. Okay, so, and the name, as I have not given any name, it picked up a random name. Okay, so under the ports, it's not. So from an end user perspective, let's say somebody else is building the image and giving it to you. So when you run it, so you will not see, or even in the Dockerfile, when you check, you will not have any idea what ports to be exposed. Okay, but if you have expose over there, you will see in the Dockerfile, you will see the ports. Okay, so that means you will get an idea. Those are the ports to be exposed, and you can do the required mapping. Okay, but let's see whether it will technically do something or not. So now here you are not seeing any port mapping, you are not seeing any ports to be exposed. Okay, under the ports, if there are any port mapping, that will come up here, and if there are any ports to be exposed, that also will display over here as a as like a declaration. Okay, so now let's inspect this container. So when we inspect this container, you will see the complete details of this container. So under the inspect, so once you list this entire data, right, you will see a lot of information like ID, when it was created, what is the what is running over here, where it is stored, all those things you will see. And apart from that, you will see a section called network settings. Okay, so at the end of it, you will have something called network settings. So in the network settings, you will see something called IP address. So this is this IP address, the gateway, and this IP address, this is a different gateway compared to the IP address of the server. So let me try. So as you can see, the gateway is 172.17.0.1. okay, and the IP address is 172.17.0.2. okay, so this gateway and IP address, let's note this down somewhere. So ifconfig from my machine. Okay, so just to see the IP address of my machine. So it listed all the interfaces. So my interface where I am connected to my local network is this one, ENP0S3, and my IP range is in the range 192.168. But along with that, you can see another interface called Docker0. This is a reversal interface which is created when we install Docker server. Okay, so and that interface you can see 172.0.1. This is the default interface that gets created, and this is the default range. Okay, this in my case, I mean the range came in 172 series. Okay, so that means when the container is provisioned, it got an IP address in this series, and the IP address is 172.170.2. right? So now as this this interface is present in the same machine, I will be able to access this particular IP address from the same Linux machine, but I will not be able to access it from a different machine or a different network. As both these interfaces are present in the same machine, I will be able to access it from the same Linux machine. Okay, so but let's say what I'll do is I'm just going to try a curl command. Okay, :2 9090 is my port, right? So I didn't do any expose or anything. I'm just trying to access the API from the container network. You see, I am able to access, right? But let's say if I copy this and try to access it from my Windows machine, which is in a different network, you will not see any response here. Okay, because it's a different network. And if you see in the command line, ipconfig, I don't have the 172 series IP attached over here. Okay, so this 172 is a different one. It is not related to this network. Okay, it's a different one. But if you see like the broadband IP address that you see over here, it is 192.168.5.148. Okay, so that means without even expose, like the expose is not going to make anything. So even if we don't have expose, I'm able to access the API from the container network. Now let's see how we can make it accessible from the host network. Host network means I wanted to access it from anywhere in 192 series range. So that means from my laptop or from any other computer or any device connected to 192 series, this network, I want to access this. Okay, so let's stop this container. Stop container. Okay, now Docker rm, I'm removing this as well. Now I'm going to run it. So previously when we ran, we just did docker run -itd, then this particular image, right? So now along with this, we'll put specify -p. -p is for public, publish, and here we do the port mapping. So port mapping means we can give host port and the port that is running in the container. Okay, so I'm going to give 9090:9090. So on the left hand side, we need to make sure this 9090 port is free in the host machine, because it will expose this 9090, the whatever is running inside this 9090 through 9090 port of my machine, wherever Docker server is running. Okay, so let's see how it happens. And another thing is, you can specify any port. Instead of 9090, you can even give 8090. So whatever port you want, you can give. So let's say 8090. Okay, so let's see what happens. Now if you see Docker PS, you see ports. Okay, it is mapped. Okay, 8090 is mapped to 9090 TCP inside. Okay, so let's see what happens with this. Let's take the IP address of this machine. This is the IP address of my machine. Okay, so my Docker server, and the container IP, right? So what is that? Docker inspect this container ID. So here the IP address is 172.170.2. So that is still there. So that is still there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to access the this API from the IP address of the machine. So instead of 172.1, so I'll use 192.168.5.28 colon, instead of 8090 it is 9090, it is 8090. Okay, so 8090/API. Sorry, so there was something wrong in this IP address. So I'm just pasting it in the right way. Now you see it is giving success. Okay, so it is able to access. So that means curl, if I paste this, it's giving sorry, not Docker, it is simply curl. So if I just do curl, it is giving me the response from this machine, and from the Windows machine I am able to access it from the Windows machine as well. So publish is what it makes the mapping. So now let's try expose. Okay, so now let's modify the Docker file with expose. So here in the expose, I'm going to give 9090. Okay, so let's see what happens. So let's build another image. Docker build Docker build -t my Flask API colon v3. Okay, dot. So it created, it's building the image and it is creating the image. Now it's installing the requirements, creating the image. Now Docker run -itd my Flask API colon v3. Okay, so now Docker PS. Now you see we just started this v3 image, right? And under the ports we can see 9090 TCP, but it is not exposed or it is not mapped to the host network. Okay, it is just giving the info there is a port 9090 to be exposed, but technically it is not doing any activity. Okay, so now if you try just the local machine's IP, right? So that means in this way here, if you see 9090, it is not going to do anything. You see it is spinning, right? The site can't be reached. That means it is not doing any expose activity or anything. It's not doing any port mapping or publishing or anything. It is just an info. We can say declarative or documentation. Okay, so I hope my example is helpful. Okay, and whatever I have explained right in this video, so the difference between expose and publish, it is helpful, because we will use this publish in a lot of places, like whenever you develop anything, or whenever you develop an application, whatever ports you want to expose, right? Or ports you want to publish, you will be using this publish in a lot of places. So often people get confused between these two, because the word expose has a meaning like expose the port, but in the reality it is not. Okay, and another thing, let's say if you want to expose a lot of other ports, okay, so you can space separated, you can give all the ports like this. Okay, so that it will just show as part of the documentation. Okay, so when you run it, it will show up over here, and also when somebody opens the Docker file, they will be able to see what are the ports to be exposed, and depending upon the requirement, you can do the mapping using the publish command or -p option. Okay, so I hope this video is useful. So if you have any questions, feedbacks, comments, feel free to comment below this video. Thank you very much for watching.